Hi, and welcome to this Leverage Technologies overview of SAP Business One 9.1. We're also going to review today various reporting options integrated to SAP Business One. This presentation was originally designed and presented to Leverage Technologies customers as part of our monthly update, but we've made it available to the broader community, existing SAP Business One customers, people using SAP Business One who want to get an update on version 9.1 and the various reporting options available, and also prospective customers who might be reviewing SAP Business One and want to understand a little bit more about what's typically in an updated version and some of the reporting options that might be available to us. Elements like SAP Lumira, SAP Crystal Reports, and SAP HANA. So let's start by looking in a little more detail at SAP 9.1. I've chosen 7 or 8 key elements that I think are particularly relevant for the Australian market in this particular update. MS Excel integration. In SAP Business One, we've always been able to take a report, for example, a BAS statement, and push that through to MS Excel. But now we can actually cut and paste to and from Microsoft Excel. So this is great for journal entry, uploading AP invoices or expense accounts. We'll demonstrate that in a few minutes. User interface editing. You can now take a standard user interface, for example, a business partner form, and using the GUI editor, we can edit that form quite easily. Manufacturing enhancements, new resource planning, sort of rough cut capacity planning built into SAP Business One, and additional functions and features built into the bill of materials under 9.1. Email enhancements, so improved Microsoft Outlook integration, the ability to hide business functions for a cleaner user interface in SAP Business One. So not only can we use the GUI editor to modify the form, but we can hide certain business functions. If we don't use budgets, let's hide them all together so that they are not seen by the user. Distribution enhancements to the pick and pack manager for the warehouse, to weight management, and to inventory costing by batch or serial number, particularly relevant in industries like food, where batch traceability and cost by batch is important. The last enhancement we'll look at today is multiple branches. So the ability inside a single SAP database to run multiple branches and then report P&L by branch, for example. So let's now move across, and what we're going to do, we want to have a look at, let's log into SAP Business One. What we see in front of us is version 9.1, and it's the HANA interface. Those of us familiar with HANA, as I scroll down, we'll see multiple dashboards, KPIs, workflow processes. So the typical HANA cockpit view. But what we want to do now is let's go into journal entry. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go along and I'm going to pick up a typical journal entry here. Let's just right click and copy out of Microsoft Excel back into SAP Business One. Right click, paste. And as I can see, I've taken that journal out of Excel and I've pasted it into SAP Business One. Now I can put a journal remark and add that journal in. So what we're seeing there is the ability to create a journal, in this instance a payroll journal, in Excel, and then simply cut it or copy from Excel and paste into SAP Business One. I could also take an existing journal sitting inside SAP Business One, and as I right click on that journal, what I'll see is that I can do two things. Firstly, I can maximize or restore the grid. So if this was a long journal, it clears up the real estate on the screen so I can see all of that journal. And then I simply right click, copy the journal. See that again, right click, copy the journal. Now obviously as I go into Excel, I could copy that journal across. So let's have a look at another example of that. I might go into, for example, purchasing. Let's go into a purchase order. Let's have a look at the last purchase order in the system. Right click, copy the table, go into Excel and paste. And the journal is now in Excel. Now I could update this journal with the various quantities that I want. And I could, again, copy that and paste it back into SAP Business One. So a practical example of where this might be used is, for example, at Leverage Technologies, our consultancy team filling out expenses in Excel. Those expenses are then right-click, copy, and pasted directly as an AP invoice into SAP Business One. This saves our accountants an enormous amount of time by simply right-click, copy from Excel, right-click, paste into Business One. So that's the first function I wanted to show you today, which is that MS Excel integration. Let's now go into a business partner in SAP Business One, and we'll call up Demo Data Earthshaker. And what we might want to do is we want to format this GUI interface. So let's go Tools, and under version 9.1 I see Edit Form UI. Click on that button. I can now see it says Business Partner Master Data, UI Edit Mode. Now what I can do is let's take the Sales Employee field and let's move it down here. That's where we want it. Okay. We don't want the Remarks field. Let's hide the Remarks field. So what I can see is I have the ability to move fields, to hide fields on the system. I must remember too that user-defined fields are typically here on the right-hand side of the business partner form. I can now incorporate these onto the main form. So I can move fields, I can hide fields, I can make multiple changes to the form by simply going through that UI tool editor. Let's not save those changes. Just a reminder, the way I got there was through Tools, Edit Form UI, which is that new function under 9.1. Let's now have a brief look at some of the manufacturing enhancements under SAP 9.1. And I see a new module available under Resources. So I have Resource Master Data, Resource Capacity, and the ability to set daily capacities. This allows me now in SAP Business One to set up resource planning associated with machines and with labor, and then to look at my capacity constraints. So very simply how that might work, let's go into the Resource Master Data. Let's call up a printing machine. And I can see some resource costs for machine time, labor, machine maintenance. But very importantly, I can see my capacity by warehouse and my planning data. So in this instance, the machine runs 8 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, and 4 hours on Friday because of downtime for cleaning and maintenance. So now what I can do is I can take that capacity into account by going into my resource capacity module. And now what I'm looking at, because it's demo data, I'm just looking at one machine and I'm not taking into account labor. But I'm now reviewing for that machine the various elements of internal time, i.e. time available. There's today, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 hours a day, Friday 4 hours, and the weekend 0 hours. Committed is production orders which are planned. As I drill down, great SAP functionality, show me the production orders. Now drill down to the actual production order in question. Okay, and now what I can see is that I've got an issue today because I've got minus 1 hour available. So I've got 8 hours of capacity, internal capacity, and 9 hours committed. So there's my bottleneck today. The rest of the week looks okay. I've got 1 hour available tomorrow, 4 hours the following day, 2 hours the next day. Now in SAP Business One, I can go in, I can drill down, I can review the production orders, and I can shuffle them around to then fit into my capacity constraints. So what this is doing is allowing me to quickly review my capacity constraints in SAP Business One Manufacturing, then to open up the relevant production orders where I have a capacity constraint, and to move those production orders to a different day. So in this instance, I could move this production order, for example, to the 27th, update the customer that it's going to be available on the 27th or 28th, and I've now effectively moved that production order, and I can see I've got no issues on any particular day. A simple example, but an example of how that new module, the resourcing and resource capacity, would work in SAP Business One. Another enhancement under 9.1 to the bill of materials. Let's just go into a previous bill of materials. What I can see now is that I can group various items. I can also have in the bill of materials, I can have resource and text. So text allows me to put some notes. For example, I have a note on line 6 which says, please ensure that label is printed and stuck on the back left-hand side of the tablet. So I'm allowing the user to put instructions into the bill of materials. I also notice that I have some resource on this bill of materials, labour, for example, on line 7. And I have the P4 printing machine on line 5. So again, some great little enhancements to the bill of materials, make it more workable, allow that text and also the resources into the bill of materials itself. The next element I want to talk about in terms of the 9.1 enhancements is the email enhancements. So let's go into, first and foremost, a business partner in SAP Business One. Let's call up that demo data for Earthshaker Corporation. And when I go to the contact persons field, I'll notice there is a new field called email group. So this now allows me to start putting Bob McKinsley, who is this particular contact for Earthshaker Corporation, into a group. That group could be invoice, marketing, statements. You can call up that group. But effectively, if I mark statements, then Bob will fall into that statements group. So what we're now starting to do in SAP Business One is put various elements of email groups against the contact, with the ability then to bulk email out, for example, statements to that particular contact. So we're seeing more and more ability across SAP Business One. If I also call up File and I say Send, I'll notice I can now send via the traditional SAP Business One mailer or via Outlook. So again, more and more and tighter MS Outlook integration into SAP Business One. We spoke a little bit earlier about our ability to hide functions as well inside the SAP Business One form. So not only could I change on the GUI form the format of the form, but I could hide business functions as well. And I can hide entire functions in the system. So if, for example, I'm not using budgeting, I can take budgeting totally off the menu. Again, just a nice little 9.1 enhancement. Click of the button, take certain functions off the structure so that it doesn't clutter any particular forms. The distribution enhancements, the pick and pack manager has been enhanced. If we just go into the pick and pack manager, those familiar with the pick and pack manager, I've got additional documents by which I can now manage the pick and pack manager in the warehouse to give instructions to the warehouse about what needs to be picked and when. I've got additional elements I can pick by, but very importantly, nice little usability enhancement. If I go into a sales order now, for example, let's call one up. So we'll go into a sales order. Let's just pick the last one. Right click, and now I can see a number of options when I right click. Now we always had some options there, but we can see some new ones. So for example, generate pick list is a new option at this point in time. So the beauty of this now, again, SAP listening to the users, a nice little enhancement. When I'm in the sales order, I can go directly, right click directly to generate pick list. I don't have to go into the pick list manager. I can also do this, for example, from a production order. So let's just have a quick look at that. I go in, I call up a production order. Let's just call up the last one. I right click and I say generate pick list. And then from within the system, I can generate the pick list as I go. So again, nice, quick, easy enhancement. The other enhancements from a production point of view, let's just talk through them very quickly. There have been additional enhancements to units of measure. Obviously, SAP Business One has had units of measure for some time, but there have been some enhancements to simplify the units of measure in the way that we might use units of measure in SAP Business One. So I receive in a particular unit of measure, I stock in another unit of measure, and I sell in a different unit of measure, for example. Inventory costing has been enhanced to incorporate costing by batch or serial number. So this is particularly important as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, for customers, for example, who are in the food industry. So let's have a quick look. Let's open up an inventory item. Let's create one. So let's add one in. Let's just call it a Z1200. Let's make this item batch controlled. Now, when I call down the inventory data and I go to valuation method, I can see the traditional moving average, standard FIFO, and I have a new valuation method called serial or batch. So serial or batch is the ability to have that costing done for that particular batch. So this batch that arrives today on the 25th of August costs $15.50 per kilogram. The batch that arrives tomorrow might be $16.10 per kilogram, costing per batch. Again, another nice little enhancement in SAP Business One. The last of the 9.1 enhancements I wanted to discuss, and there are multiple other enhancements as well, but just for today's presentation, one more to go through very briefly, multiple branches. So inside a single SAP Business One database, we have the ability to keep multiple branches. So what that means is that I can give a general manager in Queensland a P&L for their branch. Now, we could always do this type of functionality through the P&L in SAP Business One, but the multiple branches gives us some additional functionality. For example, the ability for Queensland only to see their VPs or their customers, New South Wales only to see theirs, etc. So we're starting to build out more and more functionality in this multiple branches. But very common, particularly in Australia, I've got a New South Wales branch and a Queensland. I now have the ability to monitor, to run the GL, to keep the business partners in that branch type structure within a single database. So again, another great enhancement under SAP 9.1. So this concludes part one of our presentation. We've covered off on the 9.1 functionality, and I'll split this webinar into two YouTube sessions. Session one, which you've just seen, is 9.1. We'll close this session off shortly, and then the second session covers HANA and SAP Business One reporting. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed part one of the webinar, and please don't forget, session two is available on the YouTube page and includes SAP Business One reporting options and various SAP Business One HANA options. Thanks for watching part one.